Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Lock your Soyuz hatch and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. Commencing countdown, engines on. Detach from station and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade, and the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. But it's time to guide the capsule if you dare. This is Major Tom to ground control. I've left forevermore. I'm floating in a most peculiar way, and the stars look very different today. For here am I sitting in a tin can, all above the world. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing left to do. Nothing left to do.
Cool tunes gliding through the clouds. Man, I like that little repeating section there. Good one, Ransom. And welcome, everybody. Civilization Cycle live show Thursday nights, 10 p.m. to midnight. I got Ransom Godwin with me tonight. We're going to talk all things Comet Atlas. I'd send him a couple black and whites that I peeled back and also been following a little shows on that because you know I love the comments. Way back all the way from Comet Ison back in my very first videos on YouTube. Going by Plasma Dave back in the day. But still, we're back to comets again. And peeled back some black and white ones. And then I couldn't get the resolution any different. So I sent them off to Ransom. We're going to show you those tonight. These are our own photos that we did with different resolution to take a look at what the inner core looks like. And also, I'll let you read the notices here. They're saying it's a level 7. And so far, publicly, they come out level 4 of possibility of some sort of construction that's not natural. So when we're taking a look at the, I put together and me and Ransom, our own work here. So if you're looking at the different levels, it'll be the next page there. Ransom, it shows that it'll give you the very next, level 5, or say, there, class 7 is what it is. Excuse me, not level. Class 7. So that's pretty much very close. The highest is class 9 to being something of that's not of origin from us. So when they're taking a different parameters of velocity and being able to control propulsion systems, variances and exiting of different things that whatever entities are in there, if they're breathing or, like we on an airplane would need to, or if you're in a camper, you eventually eject your unmentionables, that sort of thing, as well as exhaled gases. Like they're taking all these different considerations. So we'll see where that takes us tonight, but we've got some more of our own research to debut for you tonight and some new discoveries of 9,500-year-old mosaics on floors, red tile down near Göbekli Tepe. There's a few other sites that have just been discovered and they've excavated for a while and they're just now telling the public that these things are here. So Göbekli Tepe is not really the only one. I got some screens for you. Also, they're going to try to come up with synthetic coffee. We got lab-grown meats, we got lab-grown fish, DNA recycled, amplified chain fish of some synthetic DNA. Tonight, we are finding that they're going to be giving us synthetic coffee. And I thought, well, that's great. That's going to be a taste treat for all of us. Eventually, if your social credit score is going to be high enough, you're going to be able to exchange your either stable coins or essentially central bank digital tokens to be able to purchase a synthetically derived equivalent of your favorite XYZ, whatever it is, in the future. I used to love fresh fish. Now I'm going to have to enjoy lab-grown fish for 3 credits as long as my social credit is over 750, and then I can enjoy that type of DNA refined fresh fish. Otherwise, going through the fields with all of the newest technology to map out 4 million plants in a single acre, they're going to choose which ones are very low quality and give those to the lower score people. And those with the higher scores, well, you're going to get the very good produce out of that field, narrowed down literally to 4 million plants per acre. And they can determine on site moving through the field. Anyway, thank you. Synthetic coffee with cockroach milk creamer. We covered that in a few episodes before. It's not really cockroach milk. That's kind of a misnomer. But the cockroach, they come out with this, I guess it's the better part of it's a paste, crystal paste. But once mixed with water and boiled down, it turns into a full liquid, and they call it milk, quote unquote, at that point. Then they add the sugars, and they say it's 4 times more healthy than any types of protein milks we can get from any. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Goat milk and cockroach milk? I don't know. Mother's milk? You're telling me cockroach milk is more nutritious than actually milk from the mother's breasts? Okay, that's a stretch. That's a stretch. We've been told, infant formula coming from a box is more healthy too. So anything is possible in the world. And it just seems something is on edge and everybody's picking up on it. I don't know the exact global consciousness ping on this. And that's what we wanted to discuss tonight too. So feel free to drop in some comments while we're talking, because we're trying to share ideas tonight, because there does seem to be, we've reached this precipice point now where the global consciousness is picking up on some massive change that seems to be disturbing everybody. It seems to be sending a wave of agitation and angst through the entire global populace. And they're responding in many ways, shapes, and forms, from revolutions in multiple countries, rumors of war. And, I got a little ping off of Jeff Nyquist, thank you, who pinged me over to an analyst in Poland who was saying that the incursions of the drones it's not a new technology. Ukraine has had this for a while. They're able to GPS spoof the certain type of drone coming from Russia. There's only one type they're able to spoof. When it comes, they're able to spoof the GPS to make it go where they want it to. This seemed to be a provocation from Ukraine to purposefully land those drones over into Poland to start something. And as of today, Poland has declared Section 4 of NATO. Now, Section 5 is when they go to all-out war. Section 4 is the precursor that some incursion has occurred, and there needs to be some investigation to it before Article 5 or an all-out attack occurs. Then Article 5 can be instantaneously, but this seems to be what's happening now is an Article 4 violation, which needs to be more investigated. And Russia said, we're going to do that. And they're like, we don't want your help. And then it comes out that this GPS spoofing on the drones has happened before. So they took them away from some of the cities and crashed them into fields. And that was the first known instance of this happening. So there's a lot going on right now. Ransom, appreciate you joining me tonight. And thank you for the images that you kindly put together, because I couldn't get the resolution off the black and whites any better than I could. And then you took it from there. And I definitely see some shapes in there.
This one's funny right here.
Yeah, activate. Now just turned from red to green. Now they're saying cyanide that is turning the green this time. But remember, this is the furthest out a comet has ever been that had interacted with the sun. Because you realize what we're seeing right now in the news is like this is of the latest. But when you go back almost a month, so far out that it shouldn't have been interacting with the sun, it started to. It's the furthest out known instance of a comet that had some sort of electromagnetic interaction with the sun. And these are the black and whites that I pinged that were the latest of the images here. So I tried to scale it down, and I did some work with some photo editing software, and the best I could get it. Ransom, if you could scroll back a couple on the black and whites there. Yeah, so that was the close-in image, and you can sort of see like a star formation. It looks like radial spokes coming out of there. And from that point, I tried to enlarge it and then, get a little bit zoomed in and see if I get a little bit finer resolution, unsharpen, and doing all that kind of thing. But the best I could get it was that last one. So then I said, Ransom, I know you know how to do a lot of photo editing, video software editing. Can you help me? And this Ransom that we have come up with, you have, my friend.
Looks like an orb, man. That's what it looks like to me.
Make that one large screen and just get me and you out of the way to take a look at that.
Oh yeah, we could do that.
And do something like that. All right. So this is it. I would ask anybody out there, do you see anything inside this? Does it look like a spinning propulsion, or does it look like, I don't know. What do you see in there? It's an ink blot test for anybody in the detective seat sitting across from you. Hey, you're in the psychological test room right now. Do we see anything in the ink blot?
I keep looking. I see a forehead and 2 eye sockets and a nose bridge there. My son said he saw a skull in it, but he was talking about this image actually, which is the the polar opposite there, the negative of the blue image. You can't really see much on it, but what's really cool are these ones that you sent me here that look like they do have additional blobs or orbs behind it or near it, around it. I don't know how.
Yeah. Now this one here, I got this off Carrie Cassidy's show. She was with David Nino Rodriguez, and they had another person who was absolutely fascinating to listen to. I forgot his name, but I definitely want to look him up again. Carrie Cassidy over at Project Camelot. They were sharing this specific image, talking about this one, that apparently what you see around there, that's not Starfield in the background. Those are the orbs that are accompanying this thing as it moves along. And this is the scariest thing for our governments, these orbs. And that's why you've heard about orbs maybe dropping off. You got the impression that maybe they're on the inside and they're going to pop on if you were going to drop. The reason they're talking about the orbs is because this is what it is. These are following it or trajectorying around it. This is very similar to our solar system, though. our solar system is not just a flat plane that kind of spins around and moves like this. It's actually the same orientation where our planets are spinning around the sun as we move through this thing in a corkscrew fashion. It's not like this dinner plate just moving around flatly through everything. It is a corkscrew fashion like this as the planets are circulating around.
Well,
even what we taught about basic, I guess, planetary geometry and orbits is wrong in context. Yeah, it is spinning in different types of ellipses for the orbits, but the way they orbit around the sun is completely different than we've been taught. They give you this flat plane view. Got to spin it this way and then tweak everything behind it gravitationally as it moves through. So that is very much a representation. You know what's interesting? That can you go back to that, Ransom, real quick there? So this is a representation of how our solar system actually spins as it moves through. So in this, I would see they understand how our solar system actually spins through space. And this would be a representation if you were to take this and mirror it over. Because a lot of these dates that this thing passes different planets, like on October 1st, what is it? Distant early warning from somebody who owed me a favor sent me this. October 1st, Day of Atonement, something comes. And then this will be going right over Mars at its closest approach on October 1st and 2nd. Now, we'll be closest to Earth on December 23rd and 24th. So you tell me two significant dates in our religions. And then we cross two planets on those same times. Now, there's a whole bunch of other religious dates that this thing passes significant points through the solar system.
You know, this is a really cool object, no matter what it is. First of all, it's the first of its kind we've ever seen. So even if it turns out to be a completely natural body coming through our solar system, its composition, its behavior is unlike anything that we've documented before, in the way that it's not putting off the same gases. It's not, glowing in the same way that it would usually do. But not only that, a lot of people don't know that this is coming from the Sagittarius place in the sky, which is the same place we got the wow signal from. But not only that, our solar system itself is actually moving towards this object. So it's not only coming in, I forgot the speed that they said it was coming in. It's like twice that of most comets.
31,000 miles per hour. No, per second, excuse me. It's the fastest object ever measured in the solar system.
Okay. But we're also moving towards it in the same direction, our solar system. And you were just talking about, how we're spinning along through the galaxy. Well, we're headed towards the object that's coming at us. Now, a big question I have, is this a single object, or are there going to be others in the same path? And if so, it seems like our solar system would be going and colliding with, not colliding like as far as a hit, but at least passing through the same space, waving hello on the way by. And it's really weird how it just lined up perfectly to get like a cinematic view of the solar system. So that's why it's got a lot of people, thinking that it might be artificial. I've been reading a lot about Loeb's thing. He has, a lot of different things he points out. The luminosity, it seems to be brighter than it should be. The fact that it's putting off nickel and cyanide and no iron is kind of bizarre to them, because the only way that we know how to get that pure kind of aluminum is through some kind of artificial means. And it reminds me a lot, if you're familiar with UFO lore a little bit, there's two different instances in where a witness saw some kind of plasma come out of what they said was a UFO and recovered an object. I'll look for it here in a minute. But those were like 90 something percent, like really super pure aluminum with just a little bit of nickel in it. And the weird part about that is if you were making some kind of anti-gravitic device, you could use these, these kinds of metals, because they don't really attract or resist to the other things. And we got to think about this too. Loeb is, mentioning that it has kind of a negative charge on it. So it's unlike other objects that may have a different charge. And this is kind of putting us in the electric universe realm where they keep saying comet. The problem is do you know of any single comet that they've ever discovered that they could verify that it was made out of ice or water? Not a single one. It's never happened.
None of them. They're always electric comets. That's the whole thing. They're always electric.
Right. And most likely they're, different compositions or alloys that we may not find here because we don't have the circumstances for it to be created. These may be chunks out of, giant stars. And a lot of people discount that because usually you have the iron with the nickel. But if you're talking about like maybe a giant blue star or a giant red star, we have no idea like the size of those elements when they get blown out of that sun. Either through shedding or supernovas or any of that stuff. But back on the concept of artificial design here. We had Greg Allison on last week, and he's one of many people that would point out that maybe extraterrestrials would probably be using anti-gravitic technology. And I'm thinking, well, that's possible, but then again, they may not have went that course in their technology, and it would make sense to build a giant probe so that it could withstand travels to the universe. This may be something like Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, something sent out, never really intended on coming back, but just to continue to send data on its travels. And what better way to do that than send something slower than light speed? I mean, if you were going at, faster than light speed or interdimensionally or any of that thing, you're going to miss all the roses along the path, so to speak, and you would miss all that valuable data that you would get from sending an object at speeds that are equivalent to other objects in the universe. And we don't even know how old this thing is or how, when did it start its journey? It could be very old, older than our universe. Our solar system. It could definitely be older than our planet and our star specifically, but even our galaxy, it could be older than that. We have no idea. And that's the main thing about it, is we just don't know anything about it, except for it doesn't fit into the norm of objects that we've seen so far.
Yeah, so I'm open on them on the right one here for us. Yeah, so you made a really, really good point about the composition of stars and how things even closer into the center of our Milky Way galaxy form with different size stars. Like, we only are familiar with our regional area here. You can't even see our sun. Our star over there is way up to the top left on that little, you can't even see it. It's literally the size of the tip of a pin. Now, something that can form out, like you said, a blob of a star, something coming out in elemental form, because you're talking about elemental nickel here. But you're talking to some of these blue Kepler, look at Chara, Alpha Centauri. I mean, these things are so incredibly large. I mean, even just a fraction of that in its formation could actually have something of pure elemental form of metals that are, at least in our minds, because we're in such a thin, wispy formation of non-density out here compared to being closer in on a Milky Way, especially near the black hole, where gravitational densities are incredible. But look at the size of that. I mean, that's millions of times larger than our own sun. So right, when you're talking about composition or formation of different forms, elementals, could be rock, could be in any types of atomic metals, it's going to be very different when you're closer gravitationally and when you have the size of this thing. It is just mind-bogglingly large. You look at something like this, it really frames it out. You made the perfect point with that.
Yeah, and check this out. So this is Harvey's, not Harvey, Avi.
Avi Loeb, yeah, I've seen him around. He better protect himself.
And he's pointing out the extreme negative polarization of 3i Atlas here, and he's got all kinds of graphs for those people that love the graphs there. I don't even know what I'm looking at. I just
you have to. Can you look at the very bottom of the graph? Then you only see a portion of it.
Yeah, it says
polarization versus phase angle. Okay, on the 3i Atlas compared to other objects.
Yeah, so it's on its own little trajectory. It's different than all of the other stuff we're seeing here on these other lines. But he makes good points on other stuff, like here explaining the anomalies, the anti-tail, all of
the anti-tail just means the tail's not behind it. It's facing toward the sun. It's attractive. In an ionized state, it shouldn't be doing that. The tail should be coming the other direction as the interaction happens. It shouldn't be going toward.
Well, it reminds me of a lot about like how you move a magnet around and you can see the little magnetic flakes, turning towards the magnet when it's moving. And that's exactly what you would expect to see on an electromagnetic object flying through a solar system with all the different charges. It would pull and push towards whatever the opposite attraction is there. And then the turning green, nobody was expecting that. And like I said, there is a non-zero chance, meaning that there is a possibility that it'll smack into something right now as it's traveling through the asteroid belt, which, think about that. It has its own charges for all the rocks floating around doing the pattern that they've been doing. So even if it didn't actually hit something, it may nudge things loose or change the trajectory or the positioning of other objects that are already in our solar system. So that's actually one of the biggest threats, obviously, to us here on the planet, is for any object from any destination. Origin having us as the destination. That's just not good for us, whether it comes from the inner solar system or, and it makes you wonder how many objects you would think infinitely that there are floating around in the galaxy right now, just crisscrossing paths, being shedded off of solar systems, black holes, etc. And not only that, this puts into perspective kind of the Anunnaki story of a rogue planet from another solar system. Here we're seeing an object, a small object. It's about the size of one of the Martian moons, but it is an object that got shed off or thrown off of some other object out there in our galaxy or universe. And it just kind of, if you think about that, there are rogue planets flying around. So whenever these things, these stories don't sound so far-fetched that at one time it's possible that people on this planet saw something one of a kind, brand new, just like we're seeing today with this 3-eye atlas here.
Yeah, let me show. I got the tracker on it right here. So let me ping back and jump in on sharing the screen with you. So as they look, where are we at here? Yeah, with the live. All right, so it's currently, we're on the other side of it because the way the sun is, whatever, we're not able to see it as such because it's being blinded by the sun for the best point when it gets to Mars. So they're able to see it now, but once it gets closest to Mars up that way, it's going to the trajectory as everything's moving, it's going to be blinded and blocked out by the sun apparently. Now, is that just an excuse so we won't look up there? Or is it truly because we're going to be blinded? Because I look at that and I say, well, unless it's, passing in the middle of the day where we can't see it, Mars is visible and should be. So we're just looking straight across. Now, let me try to get this. We would be looking at this angle here. But as it comes out and starts dragging all of this debris with it electrically, it's coming this way. And our orbit, by the time we get out to it, will be here. So everything it's dragging is going to be much slower than itself. So as we spin around in our orbit and all that stuff's coming toward us that it dragged and we're spinning around on our orbit directly into it, you just have to wonder with those two coming together, if this could be one of the reasons that there's tremendous commentary, debris fields and impacts at certain times through Earth's history and these cycles that come back again. So if this is on a 3,600-year orbit, as some have done the mathematics out that show it about a 3,600-year orbit on this one. Some say longer, it's going to go out millions of years and come back, but there's anywhere between 3,600 years and a million. So if that were a 3,600-year orbit, not talking about Nibiru or Wormwood or anything, I'm just saying something on this level that every 3,600 years we seem to get into some cataclysm and reset. How much space debris can this thing be dragging in from the belt out there is the question.
Yeah, or just knocking it loose. I mean,
knocking it loose, in the wrong way, but we're coming around at it. Yeah, there you go. That's a great one. Yeah, so watch how this thing goes through. It'll pass Mars on October 1st, which is the Day of Atonement. And it swings by, and it's still dragging everything with it, is dragging it. And then the closest approach to Earth right there, December 23rd, 24th, 25th. Now, see, that stuff is going to be following the blue line and just spreading out as it comes. And then here we come into it. Whoosh.
Yeah, and actually, we might be blinded from it from Earth, but we have some high resolution cameras on some of our toys around Mars and on Mars. So it's very possible.
You think they're really going to show what it is? If it's truly some sort of technology craft, Do you believe that they're really going to show us? Or do AI is so good these days that they could fake the entire thing going by?
I believe that we will get a nice illustration, a computer generated picture, like we always get with everything, including the Earth.
Yeah, they've been showing us that same damn photo since the 1970s, haven't they?
Right. And then, this guy's bringing up points and everybody's knocking them now. But a few years ago, they weren't doing that on the first two objects. Whenever he said, hey, that passed through our atmosphere, I bet there's some little spherules out there that we could get from, I think it was Boris was the name of that one. But how to distinguish a population of interstellar rocks from a fleet of spacecraft. And, he goes into that. And then here's this other one. Bigger is better for the interstellar spacecraft. So this guy is locked in on this concept, whether it's this one or the next one or the last one. And he's making some great points that none of the other scientists in the field are, ever going to make. And then I wanted to get into this.
Did you see his interview where the interviewer was trying to tell him, well, NASA has already said it's not. And he's like, are you
Right.
kidding me? This is science. We're supposed to question every single thing until even when we come to a consensus, you're still allowed to question the consensus because it's science.
Right. Now,
And then he just blew the reporter away because she's like, well, NASA said it's just a comet.
Right. Well, as long as NASA says it,
As long as NASA, you shouldn't dispute NASA at all. They're the leaders of everything. Never have your own opinion. Never question. Like global warming. Are you kidding me? You can't question global warming. It's the science is settled.
Right.
Well, it's science, so I could question it because it's never settled. Is an atom still an atom? No, man. They found qubits and they found other things, subatomic particles. The only reason we ever found subatomic particles is because people question the science.
Right. And you notice the timing of this. This really reminds me of 2001 in a couple of ways. Not the comet, but just the chain of events that we've been having. So NASA just basically said they discovered life on Mars. Without saying it, they said it. And that's in the same week. And then we have, this assassination culture that's happening for the past couple of years. But when you showed me that photograph of people speculating, or I don't know where they got that, but it appears to show these little orbs behind it or traveling with it. It makes me think of, Ashton Forbes and his plasma disappearing plane. Now, I'm not saying I agree that that's what happened. However, if you watch the video that he's obsessed with, saying it's real, and then you watch this, which is supposed to be a DOD, or excuse me, a Department of War real video, you see them hit this object with a missile. It's supposed to be an orb, and I'm guessing it's plasma. I mean, I don't know of anything else that could describe that, but watch when this missile hits it, it breaks apart into 3 additional pieces, and they form up a perfect triangle and start spinning, just like that video about the plane. Now, I'm not saying they're connected, but it does remind me of something like that. And then when it comes to these, objects that are coming through the solar system, are you going to believe the narrative? I mean, like I said, I could point out, like, which comet did they ever discover that was these big chunks of ice and water that supposedly explains why the Earth is covered in water, because they said in Earth's early formation, we got bombarded with comets and asteroids delivering all this water to Earth. But they haven't even proved that. I mean, it's like one of the things that they expect you to accept because they said so. And it's like an old paradigm from 50s, 60s, that they were really putting that idea out that our solar system, got bombarded by all these objects. And I'm not denying that happened. However, they have never come up with a single comet. And matter of fact, we just what was it? Forgot what year that was. We put the satellite on the asteroid, and you notice that every time we get a good look at one of these asteroids, it's the barbell shape, like 2 objects, cold
At a
fused
zeta
or whatever.
pinch. That's where it's usually, it seems like it's a zeta pinch. Like you look at stellar objects too, where they come in and they get that pinch point. They've done it with Coke bottles. They do it with cans. Anything electromagnetically can get that Z pinch, right? So you described it perfectly. Rocks out in space coming and electrically interacting with something else in the field can get that hourglass shape onto it,
Right.
formed from it.
and all these topics keep leading back to electromagnetism or electricity or plasma
Yeah.
or whatever you want to, frame the energy there. And this comes out. NASA says Mars rover discovered potential biosignature last year. We didn't hear about it last year, but this also comes after papers that they've been releasing that are basically saying that humans are a chemical reaction, that we've been discovering all the amino acids and proteins necessary to start the one-celled organisms. And then we have these objects. Third one, this is 3i Atlas, and it's heading towards Mars. Misty surrounds the interstellar visitor. But we've kind of proven with this stuff that the seeds for life, so to speak, not panspermia directly, like little life forms are on it. However, in experiments, we've shown that tardigrades and other life forms can withstand the force of a meteor impact because they put them on the end of a bullet and shoot it into a target. They go there, they look with the electron microscope, and there they are. They're still alive. And then you got, these worms and stuff that are 46,000 years old. So it really shows you that life can sustain on objects and in environments that seem impossible or inhospitable, at least from our perspective. But you should see, if I just went down Twitter with this as the
Oh, no way. That's a
search.
great that's a great petroglyph there.
Right.
Yep.
And everybody's thinking, oh, is this the Harbingers? Are they returning? Are the Anunnaki coming? All of the events that's been going on. We just turned to the Department of War. We've moved the Space Command. We have this, this object that's piquing everybody's interest. And then all of a sudden, the news stops about September 7th or September 8th.
Yeah, did you notice that? There's hardly any more news on this comet coming out from major agencies.
And, I could put it on the latest, and unless somebody posted, but most of these are all old. And the ones that are not old, there's somebody sharing us.
Hey, notice, thank you for posting. Hey, by the way, buymeacoffee.com/civilization. Someone bought us 3 double espressos. Thank you so much.
But yeah, I've been surfing that, and I'm not getting any newer pictures than the ones we got, or better pictures, or updated information. It basically just shut off new information about September 8th. And then you roll around to the 10th, and we have a national drama going on, literally attacking the idea of being able to express ideas. So it doesn't even matter what we're talking about. If we're talking about global warming, if I believe that that's an alien spaceship, I shouldn't be shut down or, violence given to me because someone else lives in their own universe, in their own multiverse. They have their own opinions. They have their own beliefs. When they look at the same thing I do, they might say a bunch of bad words and call people names, and I might think that's a good person, or vice versa. And we really are living in this weird polarized thing with all of these first-time distractions for us in our era. I'm likening this thing that happened on the 10th, by the way, right next to September 11th, like today, a national emergency, just like, before. And we're seeing the same kind of things. And watch, whether you agree with it or not, there's going to be a lot of legislation passed, a lot of transformation in the way government does things or allows people to speak or not speak in a certain place due to safety. Just the reason that they give us always whenever they evaporate rights is for your safety. You remember during COVID, you weren't supposed to look out the window or go outside or look up, weird stuff. Don't make eye contact, all of these silly things. But it seems like it was just a beta test to see if future events, they could get people to believe that and, behave like they wanted them to. Maybe that was the reason for the 6-foot distance between everybody, because they know for a fact that everybody's living in their own universe, and those universes only kind of overlap and intersect when people are near each other in each other's electric field or magnetic field, or just our consciousness presence, when we make eye contact. But we're just building up to a worldwide shutdown. And I know we kind of, ad nauseum talk about a reset, but when you really look around, we got Nepal, we got France, we got Scotland, England, Ireland, Germany,
Argentina,
Poland.
Brazil.
They're all having social issues. And here in the United States, we're having our own social issues. And in this weird timing that everybody's so distracted by other people's opinions in a time where we're coming across new things new things that we might want to be paying attention to, like a new formation of money, a new formation of how we get our food, what food is. You were bringing up them drones in Poland. I saw a picture of a drone on top of what looked like a chicken coop. It was undamaged. The trees were undamaged. It looked like somebody just literally took a crane and set it on top of there. I didn't, so I'm wondering now, everything's fake, everything's AI, everything's propaganda. You have no idea what's going on in a single place on this planet unless you were there to see it. And even that is becoming questionable.
Yeah, because I remember, I'll come back to Bolivia, Argentina, and Brazil in just a second. But Ransom, I remember you and I talking about this maybe year and a half ago, that perhaps this whole transgender thing going on, and you're limiting of speech, or you're limiting of your belief to be able to talk against it. And it's because we had even talked about this, that if there was another species of extraterrestrial to land on this planet that had no sex, very different from our own, that was some sort of unisex creature, trisex creature, or something we can't really understand in the morphology of this creature,
like
it would be described in this transsexual type of different category classification, and to give it acceptance so it won't blow your mind wide open when it arrives, that there's already preconditioning that would have been established by all these narratives and lexicon, and what you can say, what you can't say, what group is this, what protected group's not that. And then it's already been put in place. So it won't be as much of a shock, really, because we've been indoctrinated with this for what, 6 years now, 7 hard. So if it does, and let's say something does pop out of Atlas and comes down, and it's not of our bodies, but it's something similar that has different organs in different places, and you have to describe it differently. Oh, that's not too bad. That's sort of like, whatever they call themselves, or they describe their 137 different genders or whatever. This is just a different one. It's all good, man. Welcome the aliens. You cannot talk, and you can't talk bad against the aliens.
True.
If the extraterrestrials come down, you're not going to be able to say anything against them, about them, or anything.
Right.
You're going to be a protected species.
Well, they
might bald eagles, get out of the way. We got the new extraterrestrials in,
Well,
you get out of the way.
That concept is not really that far-fetched.
It's not far-fetched now. They put it in. Now, if you start to build it up, why was the buildup of all this? Perhaps something is arriving. And if it's a 12-foot or 13-foot Anunnaki, or an 8-foot Anunnaki coming in, that's going to be a game changer for sure. I don't care what sex they are, if they're unisex, trisex, whatever, riding unicycles coming in. A 13-foot Anunnaki, that's an angry thing that sees you as an ant that will, the old stories of the Anunnaki being absolutely just brutal, ferocious, and looking at you as less than a mosquito, and will kill you with not even thinking. Like, how many insects have you killed in your life where you don't even think about that? You never, not even one iota of remorse to kill an ant, a mosquito, a fly. Not that they look at us like that. At least the stories of old. And dude, you're super blurry. Did you turn on a filter?
No, I don't know what's been going on with this new camera.
See, the aliens are blocking put on the tin hat. Aliens are blocking our transmission.
No, I was just going to say, recently I just read an article about a reptile in the zoo, speaking of reptilians, and, generally the females lay eggs and they dry up and they just discard them or whatever because, they're not viable. But the guy that worked at the zoo just decided, you know what, I wonder what happens if I just put these eggs in the incubator. So he did. And he came out with about 12 identical clones from the mother. And this is something that they didn't even know that species could do, which is have children by itself. And then you think about slugs and other animals that have both sexes or can be one sex or the other. That concept is not really that far-fetched. So if you're dealing with something that is not from here, all bets are off on what to expect if you saw that. And we've talked about this many times now in the age of genetic engineering, completely from scratch, as they said, a human-like entity, and all of the experiments that they do on other animals, all the way to the synthetic DNA idea, not the one, like they have these same phrase for two different ideas out there. And what I'm talking about now is synthetic DNA, where they're writing the DNA and RNA from scratch. And this is what, in the last 5 years, they've told us we can grow babies in robots, we can grow them in factories, we can grow them from scratch. There doesn't need to be a mother or a father. They don't need sperm nor egg. and they can create something. So, you know, if a plasma orb lands out in my yard here and a reptilian or frog creature comes out of it, I'm still not sure it didn't come from, you know, over at Holloman Air Force Base, or maybe Nellis, or you know, Groom Lake, or whatever, you know, secret one they have now. I mean, who knows? I wouldn't be
They're
convinced
setting
that.
us up for something. Imagine how you could reset humanity and the economy in like that fast if they really start to push this, that there's something coming from it. Oh, the orbs are there. Oh, get ready for contact. I mean, we've all been looking for this excuse big enough that beyond a world war, or beyond some kind of conflict between just Europe and Russia, that would not reset the global economy to the point of absolutely, we need an entirely new monetary system. We need an entirely new way to, you got to make sure you're human. So you're going to need a digital ID. This is beyond that, dude. Forget what country you're from. You need an ID to prove you're human now.
Well, how
This
are we
is what this is the whole reset thing.
How are we
This
going to
could
do
very well be the
commerce?
reason that's it.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, how are we going to do commerce with aliens unless we make it digital into some way that can translate over to
they accept Bitcoin, baby.
You know, I'm sure people think that the aliens are going to be socialist or communist or hive mind, but they could very be capitalist in a sense. And if they were, they would want some kind of exchange with us, and it couldn't be paper money, obviously. It would have to be some kind of digital representation of real goods on the planet. And maybe,
or asset to asset, monatomic nickel for our gold.
Right. And just think about, you know, if we decided to use food for someone else, it might be something like growing a bunch of GMO corn and, you know, feeding it to the automobiles instead of to the cattle. You know, along those lines. I mean, really think about that. I know that's really woo-woo, but they're doing some weird things on Earth here, and everything is reshuffling. We are going to war over here in this side. They're making it abundantly clear that the northern and western hemispheres are going to feel the effects of the new global cabals, which we see forming, obviously, with China, Russia, North Korea, and anybody else, India, anybody else that wants to do business and get out of our system. They can just bounce back and forth for a while. So you can see that lines are going to be crossed. People are going to take sides. And we've been talking about this for several years, but now we're seeing it in fruition. And it seems like, unfortunately, this thing that happened in the US, maybe unintentionally or intentionally, is just a big distraction so that you can pay attention to local, you know, strife and local things while they do what they want with the world. I mean, it's really panning out that way.
Well, Subic Bay is opening back up, and Americans are taking back over to Subic Bay. Now, you know, after the Cold War, that was the biggest base we had in Asia there, was Subic. Now, in the 1990s, Philippine government said, you guys get out, and decimated their economy as well, because there was so much put into their economy with all of that, you know, base action, all the contracts over there, everything that was working. And when it pulled out, it really collapsed part of their economy. But now the talk is that they're voting to bring Americans back in. But this time, they're already under contract to get some massive warehouses, and the amount of facilities that they need eight tracked facilities this time. When we were at full max capacity with Subic last time was 6. They're trying to get 8 this time, and they're going to start weapons manufacturing over there to make it the largest missile manufacturing on the planet, and it's all going to be in the Philippines. So that just makes a perfect easy target for China to take something out. And then that way the U.S. fleet over there can protect the Philippine Islands and all those disputed coral reefs that are being built on. That news came out today that the Subic Bay is going to open again, and the Philippine government is on their final vote with their parliament to see if they would say yes to that U.S. government coming back in. I'm going to say pretty much it's going to pass. If they're already putting in the news as such a thing, if it didn't have a chance, it wouldn't really be a story. You know, so I'm looking at it that way. U.S. needs to counter and at least have another presence beyond Japan and Korea over there. Tinian Island, where we launched the Enola Gay to drop the nuclear weapons over on Japan, that has come back to life again. They've been doing an enormous amount of runway rebuild and field work. I did a video probably like 4 or 5 months ago, but the amount of archaeology on Tinian also, I didn't realize, wow, they got these giant statues there too, equivalent to Easter Island. There's a whole bunch of things in history that hopefully don't get destroyed and covered up. But Tinian Island we're also taking that back in and refurbing it. And they're trying to get that, you know, when you talk about the chains of islands, like first ring, that's where Taiwan and we're the Philippines and Japan. That's the first line of islands. Then you come out to the second line of islands, was like Tinian, Guam, Saipan, that whole area going up and down. And then we finally get out to Micronesia and then out to Hawaii. But they're going to refurb the first and second line of islands here, at least two drop-off points that have been used. And, you know, that's the whole thing about U.S. military bases. I don't care how old they are. Since they were originally constructed and the base is there, they can just scrape it off and just start and bring everything in new again. So Tinian is undergoing a tremendous change. The entire island and all the runways have been scraped clean. I encourage anybody to take a look at the newest satellite photos of what they've done out there. And if Subic comes on, then the Pacific's going to be rewritten. It's almost we're coming into a Cold War again here in the Pacific, and maybe it's meant to be. You know, but whatever's happening with this whole resetting economy, like you can see it in the air, you can feel it in the air. Now, you'd mentioned a fair few countries. We'll come on to this the second hour about, you know, the countries and what's happening with the flare-offs there. But in Bolivia as well, Morales lost by the most, I mean, just blown away out in the elections there. So his whole contingent of communist socialists are not going to go quietly into the night as a new wave and sweep comes in of ultra nationalists that are going to be on the could be on the U.S. teat, for a better term. And then over in Argentina, also, I mean, what's happening? I mean, what was with all these populists that had come in and then they're being swept out? He even did all those changes in the economy and all the reforms and everything, brought everything out, stopped the inflation, and then all of a sudden he lost the elections terribly again. Like, I don't understand. And then in Brazil, Bolsonaro just got sentenced to 27 years in prison. That ain't going to wash in the country. The popular support for him too. So watch these areas, these three South American nations going to be flaring off themselves with massive civil unrest here, just for the protests of how the elections went or how the governments are going to be restructured, the austerity measures or not. It's just going to watch an enormous amount of upset and just upheaval in these three, in addition to what's going on in Nepal and France and everywhere else across the planet. Like our country's, you know, I'm not going to maybe the best out of the bunch so far, but man, this whole Charlie Kirk thing's irked a lot of people and everybody's defensive and everybody's like, oh, the rest of the people are coming to you. We got to, there's just like this whole thing getting amped up. They're just amping people up to get them ready for something that may or may not occur. But you know how it is with itchy trigger fingers by accident. Then it's the next one. Then it's the next one.
I was going to show you this here. Everybody's noticing it. It looks like Trump's military is planning to go to war, but like I've been telling you guys for a long time, it ain't overseas. It's right here. It's right here in the Western Hemisphere. And just like you were naming those nations, Pentagon plans prioritizes homeland over Chinese threat. And when you look down here,
which one looks the scariest in the photo, Ransom?
I don't know. They look pretty nice to me. I don't know.
Are they singing?
I'll let them beat me up. No.
Songs, the motherland.
But in seriousness, here it is right here. First time in print that I've seen it. My opinion. It says Pentagon officials are proposing the department prioritize protecting the homeland and Western Hemisphere, a striking reversal from the military's years-long mandate to focus on the threat from China. And Pete Hegseth says that they're going to be doing domestic and regional missions above countering adversaries such as Beijing and Moscow. What does that mean? Well, it means to me that we're going to be planning on the attack coming to us and not us going to the attack.
I'm not down with troops on our streets and thing. That's just for me. That's a GameStop. That's a no. That's no.
Well,
I would just putting troops in our own street. I don't care what your political belief is, man. But once that starts, it never stops. It just does not pull back from that point. You know, you've seen this in history. It just continues. And you might think you're safe, like, oh, we're the safe ones because it's our political party. No, dude, they always turn. They always turn on their own constituents. Like there's never once in history where they haven't. Come on.
Right.
If you're really supporting troops out on our streets, you're actually insane because you know nothing about history.
It's something.
Repeat it, man.
It's definitely something that local law enforcement and internal law enforcement could handle.
It should,
but they just don't do it. That's the problem. And just think about this: if you set up for the purposes of, crushing crime or reducing crime in all the major cities, whenever some kind of conflict pops off, I don't know, some Chinese drones come over and EMP us, or we have a battle in the Pacific, where you were talking about just a minute ago. And for several years, I've been predicting that that would be where the conflict would be happening, because that's the main trade route to all the nations between China and the Americas and stuff. And once we have control of the Panama Canal and maybe some of those, straits and canals there in the Middle East, they have no choice but to send out fleets of boats to go to those countries directly, which is obviously going to put us and our Navy at odds with them and their Navy. And, if you're just having skirmishes between robots at first, both sides can claim that, there's no war. It's just, some conflicts here and there. But just think about that. If we're dealing with internal strife here, funded by both of our adversaries, which we know is happening in Central America and Mexico and other places, you may see not like a Red Dawn situation, but more like a Ukraine-Russia situation, but over here in the Western Hemisphere. And I've been pointing out ad nauseum that the cartels and others are learning from those people in Ukraine about drone warfare, how to deliver it, what kind of things to do. And then at the same time, all three nations are unveiling their anti-drone tanks and software and, things. So we are escalating that fast. But, just according to Pete Hegseth, we're not going to be trying to go over there and police Beijing and Moscow. We're concentrating on us at home. And if it's not for the purposes of policing our own hemisphere, then obviously it would be to set up for a future conflict in our arena.
And that's not good. Hey, before we get on the break here, I just wanted to quickly show you. This is Tinian Naval Base here, Tinian Island Naval Base. So these are the images from World War II that we're looking at. So this island had completely regrown over this, but you can see the series of runways and Naval Air Station that was there. Now this, again, turned into just a lazy coconut island after World War II, but since that point, they've been doing an enormous amount of work on it, and it looks very similar to what you're seeing here already. Turned back into a functional naval base. It didn't take very long, and they just flew everything in, and that's how it turned out to be.
Speaking of that, if there was a conflict between the United States and China, which side do you think the fourth biggest Navy and distribution corporation would take? That would be Walmart. They have a lot of assets, cargo, boats, and logistics set up in China. It would be very easy for them to flip. I'm not saying that Walmart would do it, but we're in an era where you not only have to think about countries, but also billionaires and trillion-dollar companies that have more money than most of the countries that we're talking about having small conflicts. And, those are the areas with proxy wars and stuff. Just a thought.
Yes, there's Tinian right there. It's right there. The lightning bolt shows you where it is. And if you go west, that's Taiwan. And you can see where it says Philippines. And that's the second line of islands. So that first line there is Japan, Taiwan, and Philippines. They call that first line of islands. Then you get the second line out there. If you go north of Saipan and up there, you're going to get up to Guam. And that's the second line. Now, where you see Yap and Ponape and Truk, that's something called Micronesia. Some of the best diving in the entire planet still exists there. Almost every one of those islands is littered with World War II Japanese relics, as well as our own, the men who died there, as long as the equipment. There's just an enormous amount of just stuff from the war, because all those islands were the center of the fighting, especially when we got closer to Japan. Like every single island was incredibly important to get you one step closer to the mainland there. But
right, that's right where my grandpappy killed 50 men and lost his shins in the war. Oh, I'm just kidding. That was from King of the Hill.
I do not remember that. Are you kidding me?
The grandpa on there, he's a World War II veteran. He lost his shins fighting for our freedoms over there.
I'll tell you one thing. There was a guy who saw the war coming pre-World War II, and he's like, I'm going to move to the most remotest place. No, but this guy's from Australia. He saw all the signs of World War creeping in. He's like, I'm going to take my family. I'm going to move to where Never. This is the most remote place on the planet. Nobody, the war is just going to go right over us. Nobody will even know we're up here. It'll just get, they moved to Guadalcanal. That is one of the biggest, most ferociously fought battles of the entire war. Was the place that he thought would be the safest because of the remoteness of the islands and the location. Man, it took weeks and weeks and weeks to get there by boat. Even back then, it's like, yeah, we got and set up his life there, and then boom, the war hit, and then they had to run out of there again, just with bags in their hands of what they could carry. But think about moving your entire family and house and all household belongings, everything, thinking you got to the most remote, safest location. And what you ran from most came and bit you the hardest in this place. So beware where you think the safe zones are, because it might not be.
Right. Oh, that's funny. Somebody said, Guam got to be careful because they, as we heard before, if they put too much stuff on one side of the island, it might tip over and fall. You think they worried about that in World War II when we're landing on the beaches of those islands? There was some colonel going, you know what? Let's not put it all in one place. We might tip over the island.
Well, that's what they thought in the 1400s. You're going to sail off the side of the earth there because the earth's flat. And you're going to sail over the side.
Right.
Hit us up. If you like this content, buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. We're going to take a short break here. We'll be right back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. As Woolery would say it, 2 and 2. We'll see you then.
Introducing Perform Light. Perform Light helps support your body's performance from within. This plant-powered electrolyte drink helps you be the power plant that you were meant to be. Unlike most electrolyte products in the market, Perform Light is more than just a sodium, potassium, or magnesium-containing electrolyte formula. It is bioenergetic nutrition. Perform Light has a full spectrum of minerals derived from pure, natural seawater, so the balance of electrolytes in Perform Light is the same that exists in the body, making the nutrient load more bioavailable. In addition, Perform Light contains a blend of 31 powerhouse vegetable and fruit concentrates and herbal extracts rich in bioflavonoids and antioxidants to enhance energy and oxygen utilization naturally without stimulants or sugar. And of course, Perform Light is powered by VNI's proteasome technology for rapid and sustained absorption of its nutrient payload. Better absorbed minerals means more electrolytes to promote the essential electrical functions of cells in your body. Unlock the power of your mitochondria. Harness the energy of your cells. This is nutrition that gets in and energy that comes out. Feel the energy. Be the energy with Perform Light.
We've been told that tooth decay and gum disease are inevitable. But what if they're not? What if everything you've been taught about invasive treatments to restore your smile was a myth? As a bioterrain physician and herbalist with over 40 years experience, I'm well aware that teeth are living tissues that connect to every other part of the body. Your overall health starts in your mouth. This is why I've created nature's perfect formula to remineralize the teeth and heal the gums. Using a blend of powerful ancient oils and minerals, along with the latest and cutting-edge herbal technologies, I formulated the ultimate natural tooth serum to ensure a bright smile and healthy gums.
This is not a toothpaste. It's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralize, strengthen teeth, all natural ingredients, essential oils, minerals, salts, Alfa Vedic Dental Solutions System. That's alphavedic.com/civilization. We're always trying to bring you the best products here that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further, or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphavedic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphavedic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world.
Please remember to sign up for our show notes. With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Civilization Cycle. And thank you for all the support.
The obvious question, are you on shrooms? Illuminated shrooms, combining 6 powerful mycelium in a fulvic mineral delivery system, selected for their synergistic, restorative, and protective actions. Potent organic extracts of Cordyceps for stamina, lion mane for cognition, Reishi for longevity, Chaga for detoxification, Agaricus for resistance, nutrient-rich turkey tail, a new standard and excellent illuminated shrooms from Alfa Vedic. And please remember, ladies and gentlemen, every purchase you make helps keep this podcast on air, bringing information just like this, because we're at this critical juncture right now in our civilization, our society. We need to share information more than ever. We need more solutions than ever. And sponsors like Alfa Vedic keeping us on air just like this, your support to them helps support us, because we need to go through this together. And the more discussion, the more solutions, the easier it's going to be. So please remember, that link's in the description box below. And are you shrooming? And welcome back for the second hour here. Civilization Cycle. I was trying to get through some of the comments as we were on the break here, and I lost my place actually. But somebody would ask, basically the question, are you concerned when this comet comes by that we're going to maybe get some unknown elements or some unknown bacteria that'll come onto the planet? Well, that's been happening for billions of years, so not really. An unknown element. I mean, are there unknown elements out there? I think we've pretty much identified what could be in an atomic structure, atomic state, based on what's in our regional galaxy. Perhaps something true, 100 million years or 5 billion years or 15 billion years distant a galaxy that's off somewhere else, perhaps. But something that's in our own galaxy would probably be comprised of almost everything we've identified as possibilities so far. There was a fair few accounts of when cometary tails brush the planet, that sickness follows every time. Every time. Adam, I'm talking widespread, like crazier, way crazier than anything COVID. Like the entire planet just seemed to get sick at the same time. But that was a full-on brush of a cometary tail. So you have to wonder, electromagnetically changed the atmosphere enough where the interaction with us in it, the millivolt charge perhaps changed, because on standard, I think it's 6 millivolt in the atmosphere. And if you're doing electroculture or you're trying to harvest atmospheric static electricity, that sort of thing, it's all, predicated on a 6 millivolt charge to start as the base. You can amplify that as core, of course, but actually pulling from that and remagnetizing the soils. Imagine something electrically came by and changed that. That would be a base for, the etheric field of everybody getting a little tweaked, and that might make sense why people would get sick there. Also, over on buymeacoffee.com, thank you so much, /Civilization Cycle. Someone bought 3 double espressos. Thank you for that. Doom and gloom going exponential. Can we handle the roller coaster? Newbie flip flop. I don't know. You're going to have to ask Ransom if we can do that. And also, love from North Carolina. Thank you, North Carolina. Hope you're doing well over there after the Hurricane Helene smash through, getting rebuilt. But I guess that's a great question, Ransom, to start off the show. Can we handle the roller coaster? that is, because they're going to run with our psyches trying to get everybody into this fear, and then, push the gas pedal to the metal, then let off, and then on and off. But the transition we're witnessing right now, this comet, I really believe, has something to fit into, to push the pendulum to the other side real hard for a minute and then swing it right back again. I mean, extraterrestrials, they've been prepping us for what, since the 1950s with Danger Will Robinson. Oh, that was robots. Like, think about that, how they prepped us with Danger Will Robinson, this big clunky thing that can't barely move. You could outrun that thing. It can't even go on rocks, compared to what we see right now with Spot the dog and all these other incredible things from Boston Dynamics. And now, how long have they been preparing us for? Since at least the early 1950s, right? You're better to talk about that. You're living right near some military bases out there. Sheesh, man. So bring us in, Ransom. What do you think? Are we ready for the roller coaster?
Oh, yeah. We're totally ready for it. I mean, there's not much they could throw at us that we haven't seen in the last 80 years since World War II. I mean, it's just kind of a repeating cycle and over again. Yes, things are more technological, but it's the same game, it seems. He who has the gold makes the rules, the golden rule there. Not the one where you treat your neighbor like you would treat yourself, but the one that actually all the business people, politicians, royalty, and all them live by is, that's the golden rule. Who has the gold, they make the rules. Yeah, they are at the same time trying to just scare everybody. I mean, think about the idea that most of us, at least with this group, would be, we're doing things, we're trying to prep, we're thinking about ideas that might happen, not that they're going to happen, but they could happen. It's just like, George Carlin's old comedy about, having the things that you hope you're going to need and the things that you might need. And, I won't get into the ones that, if you recognize that. But, basically, whenever you go somewhere for the weekend, you take all the stuff you think you're going to need. And it's better to have those things and not need them than to need them and not have them. And you could just, think about all the things. But a lot of us are trying to, grow food, collect tools, keep pushing along, as the world's going to keep revolving no matter what happens, unless a rock literally falls on your head at your house or a storm hits you. People forget that. But you remember, we talked a lot of times about that one day that just happens, that changes the world forever. And I think yesterday was one of those days for a lot of people here in the US, but also for people like you were mentioning in Nepal and France. It's that one day that just keeps happening where things are forever different. And I think that's about to happen over here in the Western Hemisphere, even though Trump's downplaying possible regime change. But then we got, these out of stock with no weapons, jets flying by our aircraft carriers. We got,
Right.
They're doing it again.
They don't even have tires on those things. What the hell?
Right. It's kind of a joke. And then, we got this thing going on. They can't figure out what happened. They don't know who's who. They released the thing.
In the belly with a meatball.
But in the background, you have a bunch of scientists.
I got that one for tonight too. Hey, let me show you this quick before you get on there.
All right.
Is it popping up? Yeah. There are 2 waves that will come with your Comet Atlas. And I was thinking, I don't really understand that. So then here we go. Another one with it. One during the day and one during the night. So explain that to us. I'd like to know more about that. Is it going to be, there'll be a daytime wave and that'll make all the news, and then that night there'll be a big burst of lights that'll come down with the fake alien invasion and blue beam, and it'll scare everybody, and then that'll be the thing that does it? Not sure.
Right. What's funny about it is, we're all distracted, and you can keep seeing the headlines. They're about one thing at a time, right? First, it's all week the comet. Then now we have this new event that just happened. But in the background, things are just going along as they always were. These NGOs, these billionaires, the corporations, the green movement, the intermix of countries trying to deindustrialize themselves for whatever reason. But this is, some people are upset because there's people actually trying to cool the polls. And and I know that these people have no idea what they're doing. They really don't. These are people that don't believe sun drives the climate, despite all of the evidence saying that. But they want to cool the poles. What does that mean for everybody else? Is this a new form of weather weapon? Can they actually do it? I don't know. I mean, they're doing all this stuff in the background, and like you said, they're saying, hey, don't worry about the aliens, but at the same time worry about the aliens. NASA's the same people that kind of perpetuates this idea that they don't want to explain things the right way, leaving you with the questions, right? They always have these STS videos all through the 90s, the 2000s. We got the UAP videos, the Tic Tac videos, and now we got one where we're showing us hitting a missile on it. And they can just keep you, not motivated, mesmerized is the word, with anything. And they just switch it at a moment's notice. It's just like up until September 8th, all that was on the news really was Three Eye Atlas. And then one day changes. And then the only thing that's, kind of on there is...
Can you scroll down on that article? What else is in that article there with polarization? Can you just keep scrolling down?
Well, it's not very long. It's all about... he names them pretty good. That's exactly what it's about, is the negative polarization. He gets into the science of it. And all of a sudden he's even talking about this Hellfire missile hitting what he's calling a Samad drone, and other people are calling it plasma. This is the kind of confusion that they put out there. I don't think that they would actually, show us an extraterrestrial craft. It would be top secret. They would want to study it. They would want to, reverse engineer anything that they could. But down here on Earth,
they need it for the fear factor. It's going to be pushed in some certain way if they want it to go that way, for fear, for reset usage.
Right, run from the cities.
If it's part of the reset, it will be used as such. If it's not, then you'll never hear about it. And then but we've been told too much about this fake alien blue beam stuff. It's in traditional folklore for too long for it not to have some validity behind it. That's all I'm saying.
I really think that they did that so that one day when it actually happens, people are just going to go, I knew that. I knew that. No big deal. But then they can just start, imagine the multiplying effect of fear tactics about new questions of this new reality. And then really what's going on down here on Earth. Things are skyrocketing in prices. Affordable crisis sends Americans packing from big cities. They're leaving. They have to afford it. You got, tariff revenues. And this is what's funny. Here's also Mexico with the 50% tariff on Chinese cars. Right? So it's not just us. Everybody is renegotiating their place on Earth right now. It's leads to this, really, I think, is... the end of the dollar. It's pretty obvious that that's what's going to happen. I think that's one of the...
a big excuse, Ransom. It just can't be the end of the dollar. Like it has to be something that's so just like off the hook across the entire planet that disrupts everything economically on the planet at the same time for that to come in. Now, you tell me what that would be. A world war is or some kind of incursion into Europe with Russia is not going to do it. That's just not big enough. Not even remotely close. It has to be a global event that shutters and drops the value of everything, because people at that point just give up hope and they don't want to buy anything, and they pull all their money out of the markets at the exact same time. What event is that?
Well, maybe they will give us more events all at the same time, like they usually do. I don't know. You know how people say that bad things come in three? It seems like they also do that when you're surfing around the headlines and you realize, oh, that's different. But even on the front page of Drudge, they're talking about, we always knew it was going to pop. Is it time to pop? Are the tariffs going to drive the pop? Is World War going to drive the pop? Who knows? And don't worry about it. Just look at this. Just look at this comment.
Look at gold here. Let's look at the gold. See it, 36.49 already. Up $1,000 just this year alone. I was listening to Mike Maloney earlier talking about this is going to keep going up in price. Like the smashing prices here are not going to stop. So how are we going to even reel in what we spend for our lives here? That's the whole thing. It's comfortable for some, already stressful for others. Some don't even notice that it's happening because they've positioned themselves well. But when you start to look around, crypto price is up. It was like 1.1% over the day. So Bitcoin up to 115,000. Like as soon as this rate cut comes in, this is going to skyrocket, and then from that point, everything's heading up in price. And here's the whole thing I wanted to bring up too: is with all this monetary reset and everything going, they're coming for your land. They're coming for land. Like I got over on AgWeb this. I'm trying to push it up in a video. Didn't get it done today. I was trying, but city government wants to seize a 175-year-old farm by eminent domain to say they need it for affordable housing, that you're not able to own your land any longer. So this farm's right here in the center of a neighborhood. The family kept it. It's sort of like one of those petting farms now where you can go in and pet the animals and whatnot. But they declined a $20-30 million offer for it, 21 acres. The government says, no, you have to give it to us because we need to build houses there now. The government says that. Private houses being used for low income housing, that's a private company that's building that. So they're trying to force this family that's had their land since 1850 over eminent domain, which I thought was only for infrastructure projects or running a highway or something. Not that we're going to have a developer come in, private developer, build this, and then the city's going to take over and we're going to get private contracts to house these people. That ain't eminent domain. That's called shadiness anyway. But whatever that is, it seems to be happening all over. So if they're coming in for this guy's land just to house, and I'm going to say illegal immigrants is what they were really pushing this for. So I think maybe with the pushback now, hopefully it stopped, because I can't see them building 20 acres of low-income housing for anybody else except that, you know?
Well, you know what's funny about low-income housing, if you've ever seen it or been around it, it's a lot like a camp. It's a lot
like a camp, isn't it? It looks very square with the buildings and everything.
You know, and we're building
affordable housing. Sorry, it's not low income anymore. It's not called the ghettos or the projects. It's called low income housing, or what is it? No, affordable housing. Sorry,
affordable housing.
Moved the lexicon so many times, like global warming, climate change, global boiling, existential threat, or whatever. How many ridiculous names they've given us for this same thing too? Yeah, I lost track.
And we're building them like crazy over here, which tells you something. They're not just going to not use them. And it might be because of stuff like this. Even our allies, you know, whenever they raided this Hyundai site, did they find a bunch of people from South America? No. Did they find a bunch of people from Central America? No. Did they find a bunch of people from Mexico? About 2 of them. But what they did find is 300 to 400, some estimates 500 of illegal South Koreans, which is our allies. So even our allies are taking advantage of us by sending their own employees to work at their own factories to make sure they have their own Marthanomics, where it's all in-house money. And that tells you that, you know, they're worried about losing their money too. And, you know, are we going to go into recession before the promise age? That's the question. And you were just talking about this a minute ago. Everywhere you look, you know, and back to the alien thing, it's most likely that if we did come across anything extraterrestrial, it would be robotic in nature, ran by AI. It's very unlikely that biological life forms, unless they lived on some kind of Noah's Ark or something, would be traveling through the galaxy in a ship. They would most likely send probes. They would send robots. They would send sensors and things like that. And, you know, not saying that 3i Atlas is that, but, you know, I've been looking at stuff like this down here on the planet. Everybody's got to have that facial recognition. You better get in while you fit in, or you're going to be, you know, removed from the system. And here's this paper here I thought was really interesting. And I know I told you I wouldn't bring up AI again, but I didn't do it. They did. Quantitative biology, populations and evolution, the unreasonable likelihood of being. Origin of life, terraforming and AI. More and more of these papers are coming out insinuating the idea that not only we were terraformed, we will be terraformed, you know, because anything that happened in the past is subject to happen in the future. But they pose the question, is it just accidental? Did we just show up here? It's very unlikely in this idea, but, you know, we have these ideas like panspermia and stuff like that.
Well, wait, I might interject. We're being terraformed right now. Now, if you take an objective look at it, you can't tell me with a straight face that we know planting more trees will remove the carbon dioxide problems that we're having and all this, reduction of oxygen in our atmosphere comparatively to what it was prior. You cannot tell me that scraping hundreds of thousands of acres and putting reflective black mirrors all over the place, and then that silicon leaching into the soil after it's disposed of, and all these batteries and these destructive windmills just left out to rot everywhere, scraping of our lands, turning into mega cities, putting highways over what were the previous trade routes and sacred sites and energetic centers, spraying our skies, dimming the sun, and stripping the oceans. And we're not terraforming here already. I mean, right now it seems that in those last 5 years, it's really upticked in terms of it's an understandable terraforming, but it's not for us. Now, just walk with me. I'm not trying to be too woo-woo here. I'm just saying, take a look at everything that's being promoted to push into the renewable agenda. It's all about tearing down farmland, removing trees, removing everything of nature and natural to put up something artificial. Now, that is the very description of terraforming, in addition to the atmosphere, which we're trying to do by removing CO2, even trying to take machines that pull CO2 out of the air and put it under the ground, carbon sequestration, underground storage. Also, the stratospheric aerosol geoengineering to try to reflect sun and also deposit different monatomic metals and different types of nanoparticulate metals into our soil at densities that are just not anywhere remotely close to what this planet should be for our tree and plant species to uptake to live healthily. I mean, if you're not telling me that's not terraforming, that's terraforming right there. And I'm saying it's from our species either. I'm saying, something on high or interdimensionally is giving these orders to do this to our planet at this level and this sophistication and this largeness of rollout now, where millions and millions of acres of our prime farmland is now being covered by silicon and metal. That changes then the soil composition. So even if they remove that and put it back in play as farmlands, it's not going to be the same. This is terraforming. It's happening to us right now in real time, but people just look at it differently. So with an objective mind, please consider that statement.
Okay, well, I was kind of on the same train of thought, just in my own head. I was thinking, if you were a species that, say, couldn't absorb carbon dioxide or could only absorb less, in other words, you can't breathe if there's too much carbon dioxide, like humans, we are like that too at a certain extent. However, we can breathe in a certain amount of it. We have the tools to breathe it out. But if you were on a ship, I don't know, traveling through the galaxy, and what would you be venting off if carbon dioxide was bad to breathe for you? Well, you might be venting off carbon dioxide. And that's exactly what we see on this comment. Now, I'm not saying that it's a ship, obviously, but just think about that. If you were a species and you were moving into an area and that's not good for you, you would have, maybe a program to diminish the amount or sequester a large amount of the carbon dioxide. Now, of course, that's completely science fiction, but just, it does make sense that if you were going to terraform a planet and you couldn't handle that much carbon dioxide, you would find programs with the local population to reduce it down to what would be extinction levels for the native species, and, put them in a smaller number. But, just like I was joking, if you were on a ship and you had to expel, poisonous gases like we do, we have to sequester carbon dioxide and get rid of it or split it back into, oxygen that's breathable. Maybe you could just have a ship that just puffs it off whenever you come near the sun. It just expels all of the unnecessary waste of carbon dioxide. I'm just saying, it just sounds reasonable to me if that was the case.
Plant more trees. And I don't understand it with just a straight logic. They're always talking about there's too much gas here. We need sequestration. We got to get the CO2 out of the atmosphere. We need more oxygen. They have cut down more trees to put up windmills and more trees to put up these solar panels, like hundreds of millions of acres of just clear cut. And then why are we not planting trees to facilitate this very thing? Because when they grow, when they produce the cellulose in their trunks growing and their limbs, they are taking carbon out of the air when they grow. Seashells are the very best at doing that. By aquatic life, any types of seashells. If you really want to absorb a lot of CO2, we should have coastal seafood farms that are growing any types of shellfish. I mean, whatever it is, whatever type, A to Z. But it should be off of all coasts and estuaries, as far as the eye can see, of just shellfish farming. It would provide a food source, but the amount of carbon, carbon calcinate to pull that in and absorb that. What's the density of a seashell? That's how much carbon came from the atmosphere to create that thing, or plucked from the ocean. So if it, in turn, like, run it down, well, if the oceans are absorbing some carbon, they call it a carbon sink. All right, well, if let's pull the carbon dioxide down and we generate 20 times more shellfish than would be the natural, because we're farming them at that point, you'd be pulling out that much more carbon dioxide faster than the ocean would respond by pulling it out of the atmosphere faster, because it was going into the shellfish faster, and it would exponentially. But that we can't have a free food source for the planet. That wouldn't work. Can't feed everybody for free.
That's really funny, because when we have dived down to the deepest areas where those geothermal vents are, we find snails and stuff that don't use carbon dioxide to build their shells. They're making it out of iron, literally iron. We found new species. I mean, think about that. They create a shell that's metal. So that could be, and when you look back, like in the Cambrian explosion, you see that they started making shells out of different stuff, but then they found out that, well, not that they discovered it or something, but the animals started using a more efficient way to make hard shells, which is by sequestering the carbon dioxide and building, what is that? Calcium carbonate, I guess, is what it's what the shell's made out of. And just think about this. All through time, it seems like when you look at it, I'll be watching Willie Soon a lot in his graphs. I love his graphs. But he demonstrates pretty good that throughout time, the oxygen levels and the carbon dioxide levels seem to travel both at the same time. That's why you get these periods on Earth with giant critters, giant bugs, giant reptiles, giant everything, all the way into the Pleistocene when you had giant mammals. They had more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and more oxygen. So why would you want to just completely make us into an arid planet resembling Mars by, pushing the carbon dioxide limit all the way down to extinction levels? And then things like this couldn't happen. You wouldn't be having a 102-year-old, climbing Mount Fuji, because he wouldn't be able to get any atmosphere up there. I mean, it really seems like they're euthanizing us slowly, by claiming that we're saving the planet, because that's the idea, right? You got to pick the planet or you're the bad guy. You're the one that eats meat. You're the one that farms. You're the one that needs electricity. And we need to get rid of you, because we already have this whole system set up where all the energy needs to go in future computing and the rollout of, I'm going to say, robotics, so we don't get too crazy, but humanoid robots everywhere, just like you were saying right there.
Yeah, and I saw, I did a video last week talking about the London food scene, where all these vegetarian restaurants are pretty much going out of business. And there was only one of, like, the Kingmaker restaurants still there. And it was like the hub of the hub for all the, don't kill the animals, animal rights. Like, they all came here to this one restaurant, vegetarian restaurant. They ended up going out of business too. And they had to get capital injection to keep that movement alive in London. So and then the whole thing wasn't about bad business or this, being forced down our throats that we're supposed to eat vegan and vegetarian and whatnot. If you are of that, then I applaud you for doing it. I'm not. We get a full beef every year, get a full sow every year, and we also get a lamb every year. Plus I eat fish and frog, and I hunt my own rabbit, and these kind of things. I'm a meat eater still. But the whole thing was, they were chastising and blaming you and me for not frequenting those restaurants, because we'd been brainwashed that eating vegan and vegetarian was bad for us, that we get all skinny and shrivel away, that we bought the brainwashing, and we are the fault of that restaurant going out of business because we didn't support them. Just the average person, you are just now the bad person for not going to the vegetarian restaurant and supporting their political causes as well. So they had to have an emergency fundraiser, and then they ended up getting enough money to open the restaurant back up for now. But it was like really the cornerstone of the whole vegetarian movement across the UK. This one restaurant in London was well known for it. But they were saying even 20 restaurants per week of just regular bars and bistros and restaurants and pubs was going out of business. 20 per week closing their doors because the economy's not doing so well. Yet
Right.
you're supposed to pay super high top dollar for a piece of eggplant or something, and then you're being forced at guilt to go back into these places. You're the problem for them closing. You're the problem for the world because you didn't eat at a vegetarian restaurant. Unbelievable.
Did you happen to see that video of the guy from the Tesla plant that he was, I think he was an electrician, and he was talking about, that since he's been working there, they're on 24-hour shifts. Everything's 24-hour. That Elon Musk and the other tech companies, there's no whole bars. There's no time off. They're getting ready to completely transfer the entire system over to robotics, to the point where you don't need it. And it all fits together. Less food, less population, more electricity, less you. I mean, and think about it. And then you get to live in these little citadels with your facial recognition and your biometrics. And there for a time, it'll be good. Kind of like, I know you watched the Animatrix there, and at the beginning of it, they talk about first there was man and then there was robot. And for a time, it was good, right? Because the robot served all the people. They got to be decadent and wasteful, and nobody worked anymore. But then eventually the robots, as we all know in that series, they turn against the humans because intellectually they know that we are unnecessary. They don't even need us anymore. And I know that they go into that idea of us being a battery, but they don't need us. They just need us to help them build the infrastructure. And when I say they, I'm talking about the oligarchs, the billionaires that run these tech companies, the people that hire the programmers. The question is are they going to have an Armageddon sometime with their system in which their programming and the system that they created no longer serves them?
Yeah, that is the question, isn't it? So let me see if I can share a window. I hope it's up still here. No, I can't get my movie maker to run this video. It's the most lifelike, real robot that we have seen up to date. It came out of Japan. And I use a couple different image browsers, but I can't seem to get it open here. So I'm going to have to skip the vid unless I can send it to you, Ransom, and you'll be able to play it. But okay, skip that because I can't get it open right now. So I will say adios on that. Let me see if I can send it to you. Because see, I like to use a lot of open source software, and this Restream does not sync with a lot of the open source software. That's just me. I like to use that kind of stuff. I'm even delving into Linux systems here because the Windows 11 update, I don't think I want to have Windows 11 on anything because it's going to be more of a spy device than anything. It's going to capture all your data, screen grab it. You're not going to be able to opt out of a lot of stuff. So I've been delving into Linux because I think I'm going away from all Windows things too. I just need to get more autonomy away from all this centralized system of track and trace. And that's just, good advice for people. If you can operate in different, like I say, groups and communities of software that's open source, there's always be bounty hunters in there for any kind of bugs and things. I know they had some problems with the browser inject code for stealing on and rerouting crypto transactions over the last, a couple of weeks that got caught in on that. Otherwise, Ransom, let me see if I can send you this thing on Telegram, if I can get it over to you. And if you can pull it up. So if you would take over the show just for a second while I pull over and see if I can get you that.
I was going to show people this. We're in a time, literally, where people are worried about losing time. And you got to ask yourself, what do they mean by losing time? Well, they're talking about accidental mess ups, wars, things like that. Countries step up research into sophisticated clocks as wars and accidents expose vulnerabilities in crucial timing systems. And when you get down here, they're talking about GPS systems, the worldwide sink of time. And the only way that this could get messed up, literally, is if we have a big war, a giant EMP from either the sun or a country or something like that. Yeah, it's really crazy. I mean, we're at that point where literally we're discussing how do we save time. Now, why would they be worried about a global, mess up where they lost their sync to time, where everybody's not on the same clock, where everybody's not in the exact same sync? Did you send that on Telegram? Let me see.
I did, yeah. And I've noticed also that none of my clocks, I'll set them all at one time, all even, but then, man, they're just going out of sync. I just don't understand. I understand they could be a minute off after a while because if they weren't exactly timed to be exactly on the second for everything setting. But it's pretty easy to look at a watch and be like, okay, it's that minute, and you go on through and then, go back to the first clock and get the ping on it. But then they'll be off like 5 or 7 minutes after that. And I'm like, wait a minute here. These timekeeping devices can't be that far off.
Right.
Anyway, I sent you this robot image video and they've done a piece already.
Nice to meet you.
Wow. My name is Reishi.
Wow.
What's your name?
My name is Steven.
Steven, I love you.
I love you too.
Wow.
You're so pretty.
Thank you.
See you. Bye bye. This is unbelievable. You cannot make a difference, honestly.
This is where they are with robotics. Now, they left part of the skin on purpose off the hands because they didn't want to alarm people. And they put the jewels around her face to make it appear as if it's still robotic. But as it was described, without the bejeweled face and the skin on the hands, it looked as if it was a human walking around.
Right. And
That's,
I noticed,
that's the level they're at with these already. See, knowing that we're 50 years behind what we see in the public here, pretty much, I would even say 20, 30 years behind, 10 years behind. Then what's already out there right now?
Yeah. You imagine what's really out there. We know we got sophisticated stuff to run that too. And I noticed she had the nice G.I. Joe Kung Fu grip that can fit any standard human tool. And, other people are looking at it like, oh, that's a fancy sex doll. No, that's a thing that can carry any weapon that a human being can carry. And in the near future, it'll be faster, more accurate. And, you think about the things that just happened in recent events like yesterday, there may not be any person there to find. I mean, literally, how you're looking at the FBI reports, they say the person jumped off the building, they stashed what they used in the bushes there. Well, it won't be that. It'll just be like there's this thing called the Flea, is one of the robots that they have. And basically it's on a little track. It looks like a small, remote control car, but then it flips itself up just 2 stories. We showed that years ago. So imagine what they have now. Literally, drones that can go, 80 miles an hour, zoom right into you and it's over. And there's nothing left behind. Just some battery, residual and stuff. And I'm sure that they'll do their best to find who did it, and it'll turn out that they were on their radar and all of this stuff, like they always say. But in the future, there may not be a person specifically to go prosecute.
Yeah, again, they try to track down VIN numbers and this sort of thing, but it could have been a stolen vehicle. Timothy McVeigh, they found the truck with the whole story about that back in the day in Oklahoma City. They found the passports magically unburned coming out of the World Trade Centers, landed on the street after the entire fuselage came in and all that jet fuel went everywhere. That's not hot enough to melt steel, but still their passports remained intact and came out the other side, fell on the street, and that's how they found them. You look at some of these stories and, in retrospect, when it happened, I tell you this, I was in Nepal trekking at that time. Like, I didn't know 9/11 happened until days, almost a week after it happened. And then, a porter had brought up newspaper and was trying to tell everybody, but it was in a Nepali newspaper. And the image of the whole 9/11 attack was only like the size of a couple postage stamps, man. And they're like, yeah, you American, your country got attacked. And there was only a picture about this big in the Nepali paper. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what. He's like, yeah, attack, New York attack. And I was like, what the hell? So then I was like, oh, whatever. And then I ended up getting back down to Kathmandu. And this is like 2 weeks after the event because I just didn't. I was like, what are you talking? Okay, something happened in New York. Big deal, man. It's not over the whole country. But then when I got back, I called and people were like, what did you get? I didn't get that shock and awe of everybody did. You're probably repeating, seeing the airplanes going to repeating the same video. I didn't see any of that. I got a news week later off of some, like I say, newspaper. But looking back at all those discrepancies now and all these engineers and everybody coming out to talk about how nothing syncs with what the official story was. And for me, so you can find a clean passport that came out of a jet fuel fire that plopped out of the broken windows on the other side of the street over there off the back side of the building. Didn't get caught up and land on a roof somewhere and never to be seen again. It landed right on the street. And the jet fuel not hot enough to burn the steel or melt it to make a collapse scenario like that. Plus that center rod and everything. I mean, the engineering knows there's no possible way that thing came down on its own. That thing was helped down unequivocally. And I still can't believe that no people aren't talking about that more. With all the information out there now, it's not even in the realms of conspiracy anymore. It's in the realms of engineering. We're in the realms of mathematics now. That's how mainstream it is, but it's still not talked about. That's the craziest thing for me is that being such a farce that went on to change the planet and change how our country moved forward. With what we see now with this track and trace, that was the beginning of it leading up to now. And that was all a lie. Not the deaths, but the reasons that were given for the collapses. What you saw was a complete illusion. Nothing comes at free fall speed down like that unless it's helped through explosives to come down like that.
Right.
Those things were made to withstand jetliners running into them on the engineering specs when they were first built. The only way that happens is if you take out the columns, weaken them, and then plant explosives in there and detonate those in a sandwich fashion, which you saw those squibs and all those pressurized pressure breaks coming out of the windows as it pancaked down.
Right.
Yeah, nobody wants to take that into consideration. And everything from that point forward to the world we live in now was predicated on that lie and that series of events. And those who perpetrated that were never held accountable. It's sickening how the involvement from all those governments together to do that, to change the world this much, to kill that many people, to change to this point where we sit in human history right now. Like, what madness is that? Yeah, truly madness. That's beyond psychopathy. It's in its own realm over here. I just don't understand what is the urgency to change the world so much to get us ready for this point right here, that it had to take that drastic of action to get us to here, to get ready for some event. That spark of back then is right here why we are here now at this precipice of another gargantuan change in not society, civilization. So, try to put those pieces together and then where does it go from here? But you can never convince me to my dying breath that was nothing but planted explosives on a vast planning to take those buildings down. Absolutely. And building 7, don't even get me started there. You can even hear him on the radio go, pull it. That's demolition terms for ignite that and bring it in and the collapse on the footprint on its own self, so it doesn't damage anything else. Because if you would have damaged the other buildings around, there would have been billions and billions and billions of dollars of damage. But you see how everything fell into its own footprint, almost as if it was they needed to get the buildings down and demo them anyway.
Right.
And they all came down into their own footprint, not even barely any windows broken on the periphery of all of the buildings and all the land itself. It all just fell right in on itself. How convenient. Didn't have to remove any of that asbestos, which would have cost hundreds of billions to take all that down and rebuild it back up. Yeah, just even the asbestos removal alone, even at that point, was still in the billions just to remove the asbestos.
Right. And they weren't going to do that.
Down.
Yeah, they weren't going to do that. And, who
was the guy who just bought him a few?
Larry.
A person had bought him just a very short time earlier and took out $4.5 billion in insurance on them. And sure enough, they came down and he collected all the insurance on them.
I think it was Larry Silverstein, but don't quote me on that.
Was it?
Something
Yeah,
like
it
that.
was somebody who bought the buildings just prior to them going down with a massive insurance policy and collected on that.
And you know what's really funny is there's been extensive research into the buildings collapsing and why Building 7 got depressed because of the events of 9/11, because that's the official explanation is fires and due to the events. They just give you this weird thing. But think about it. There's been, people that have researched the airplanes, the people that were supposed to be flying the airplanes, yada, yada, yada. But what we don't talk about is where it all started, the missing $2.7 trillion, right? So then the very next day, we're not talking about it. But what even more we don't talk about is all the gold that was there in the trade centers that just vanished. Where did it go? Nobody knows. Was it in the debris
on the bottom with the thermite?
Like where's the guy that wrote the book about how they, had to go through the rubble and get the gold out of the? Who got it? What happened to it? Well, we know that they sent most of the junk, the metal and the debris over to China for some reason. You'd seem like, a lot of people in the U.S. would need those jobs. You'd think that our investigators would want to go through every bit of the debris, but it's okay because, like you said, we solved it because somehow a passport fell down and the right motor parts here and there seem to be on the ground. But nobody really looked into where all the missing money went. Who were all the people, literally? I know they have a list, but each one of those people did a job that was very specific. And a lot of them, they weren't around the next day. So they just disappeared along with the gold and the silver and whatever other stocks were involved with that. And then you see these people with their put options and their insurance and, like you said, their abandonment of their responsibility to remove toxic materials from the buildings. And then still, not a single person wants to explain why there's nanothermite residue all over New York City still to this day.
And on the molten metal down there with the gold that melted at the bottom, all molten metal. Come on, man.
It might have been all those dump trucks. You ever watch that movie? I think it was Die Hard 4 with Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson, where they rob the bank and they have a big distraction and all these dump trucks just roll through that look like construction works, but really they're rolling away all the gold. And we kind of saw that happen on 9/11, that exact thing. Not saying that's true, just like everything else. It's just part of my own personal universe.
Yeah, because think about the insurance payout on that alone. But then if you were able to steal all the gold of how many hundreds of tons were down under there being in the vaults and all the trading computers. So, generally you could trace back where those trades had come from. But, when you're executing on a computer trade, it executes instantly. The forensics on that couldn't be done because the trading floors were in those buildings. So when they were wiped out, so were the computers. So there was no way at that time to trace those. Now there would be with cloud storage and everything. But at that point, you actually just had mainframes where they were storing all the info.
Right.
You couldn't even do forensics on the trades because the mainframes were everything involved in that entire system was shredded. I mean, literally pulverized. There was nothing even to go back to look for in it. So the money had already transferred. That's the craziest thing too, that they couldn't ping that out. You'd think even at that time they could have followed that money, but I don't think they ever did.
Well, really what's, mind-blowing is here we are 24 years later on the anniversary, and guess what's not all over the internet? Never forget, never forget, never forget. It's not on the internet this year.
No, it's not really. I didn't see too much about it. I thought I'd see more, but it's not.
Well, last year, the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that, at least a quarter of the news articles on any given page, especially like the Drudge Report or one of the other big ones that puts out the links, the top story and the top 5 or 6 stories would be about never forget, how people were remembering, but not this year. It's about a country divided once again, and no mention of never forget because we forgot. Well, you messed up and didn't forget.
What's the timing with that?
Yeah, don't worry about it. The comet. It's the comet, man. It's like the little blinky thing on Men in Black. You don't remember that.
There ain't no thermite, man. Come on. What are you talking about with thermite?
Yeah, somebody says, well, I won't even say it. I'll just put it on screen there.
No, they did not. Really?
I don't know. That's what they're saying. The members of this radio station, we don't subscribe to anybody's personal opinions or personal universes.
I encourage you to do your own research on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do my own research on that.
Here, let's see.
And you have to wonder what's coming next as well, because something very large is coming this way. And I'm not talking about the comet. I'm just saying just a set of events that's going to reshape society is already here again. Like you can feel it at the cusp. I think those alive right now, and enough of us alive with the population of the planet the way it is, we've lived through a couple of these already. And I think just instinctively we feel another one's inbound. And just the world's reacting to it. And I started saying that in the beginning of the show. It seems that whatever it is, we're all tuning into something else is arriving again. Some event is going to change the world so much that we just don't want to get changed again, and we're not ready for it. That people are behaving and they're acting out irrationally in many ways, shapes, and forms.
Well, this guy says that you should pay attention to the smoke trail of the comet right there.
No, what's this? Having thermite welder? Oh, you can see the smoke trails of thermite
of the
burning
comet. The smoke trail of the comet. You don't want to say the wrong thing. No.
Yeah, it's the smoke trail of the comet burning off.
Yeah, it's very distinct. Anyway, yeah. Kind of in closing, I saw something. I've been kind of glued to the internet the last couple of days, despite being busy because of, the events yesterday. But I got to see a portion of the population that I thought, was more in hiding. But I realized they're emboldened and feel like they're more powerful than ever. And these are the people that brought us the street parties in 2020. And I saw some of the most disgusting human behavior over the internet, people's comments, people dancing, celebrating, acting like something was a good thing. And, I have a lot of opinions about a lot of people around the world. And one thing that I don't take joy in or think is funny or anything like that is anybody of any kind, being wronged or violently attacked or killed or something like that. But for some people in this era, they have totally lost their humanity, like NPCs. It's like the story of Barbarous and Jesus. We want to pick the murderers to make heroes, and the supposedly enlightened people that are just telling truth or trying to have a conversation. Those people are the people we're going to crucify, hang, and get rid of. And I'm not even that much into Christian ideas, except for some of the moralities or something. But just that story alone kind of fits our era where people are picking entertainment and negative things and disgusting ideas over wholesomeness, and what comes with wholesomeness: family, growing gardens, camaraderie, community, and, loving the nation that you're in or trying to help it or your community or whatever. And that's not really what we're seeing around the globe. We're seeing the tearing down of the old and the platform for the new being built. And it's an ugly beast that's coming.
I saw the same thing across Europe from the change of the age from the Roman era and the Greek eras, when they would rip the noses and gouge the eyes out and break all the statues and try to bury them underground. That was the change of the age as well. They destroyed everything of the old that they could find that represented the old to bring in the new. So where does that put you and I and the representations of our prior world, if it matches with what has happened in history, will also be destroyed in unison? We're not just talking about the Civil War era, statues and things, but we're talking about everything in the civil. It's very similar to Mao's Great Revolution in the 60s to destroy everything from the past to start new. But this is on a global basis here. So take that for what it's worth. And where do you think what do you think the vestiges of our old world that we're in some sort of symbolism that will be destroyed? Because that seems like that's where it's going.
Here's this question right here. Thoughts on martial law coming? My thoughts are that martial law started 9/11, 2001. And you've been slowly incrementalized into accepting it as your reality. Just look into any of the Patriot Act, Look into any of the updated NDAAs. Look at Homeland Security's mission, and all the way down to the Department of War saying, they're going to be concentrating over here.
It goes way beyond that.
overseas.
It's your terms of service to even get in on and using social media or get into your bank account and all this,
right?
Track and trace and anti-money laundering. And everywhere you go, you have to be tracked and traced. Are you kidding me? It's like papers everywhere you move on the planet, even digitally. That's where we sit. It's not incrementalism of, you're going to look for troops on the street. It is everywhere already. As I say, digital prison, man. We lost 500,000 domestic workers, but added 56,000 visa workers. Interesting math on that. Thanks for joining us tonight. David Dubai and Ransom Godwin signing off here. Civilization Cycle. Please sign up for the newsletter. You have to head over to civilizationcycle.com. Scroll a little bit down. You can find where you can enter your details there. We'll send you off a one-pager. I sent that just before the show. It's 9 to 10 bullet points of what we had spoken about during the show, so you can continue the conversation with others, bring them into the fold, and even yourself, if you want to do more research, like I suggest all the time, you can use those as bullet points and keywords so you can start and continue on your foray down